Hello, fellow bookworms. Thank you for diving back into the Abyss today, but specifically the Abyss Book Club. We are super excited to jump back into this. We know we took like a little bit of a hiatus and everything, doing our little thing, so we're excited to get back and going. I'm Hallie.
And I'm Brittany.
And today we're going to be talking about The Guest List by Lucy Foley. We hope you like this book and that you dove into it. Sorry, improper grammar. This was one of the books that I believe was on Reese Witherspoon's like book club series kind of thing. So if you want to hear more about it, you can also listen to her book club. Ding ding. Okay. So I guess let's dive into it.
So just a recap of the synopsis in case you need a refresher or if you haven't read it. The bride, the plus one, the best man, the wedding planner, the bridesmaid, the body. On an island off the coast of Ireland, guests gather to celebrate two people joining their lives together as one. The groom, handsome and charming, a rising television star. The bride, smart and ambitious, a magazine publisher. It's a wedding for a magazine or for a celebrity. The designer dress, the remote location, the luxe party favors, the boutique whiskey. The cell phone service may be spotty and the waves may be rough, but every detail has been expertly planned and will be expertly executed. But perfection is for plans, and people are all too human. As the champagne is popped and the festivities begin, resentments and petty jealousies begin to mingle with the reminiscence and well wishes. The groomsmen begin the drinking game from their school days. The bridesmaid not so accidentally ruins her dress. The bride's oldest male friend gives an uncomfortably caring toast. And then someone turns up dead. Who didn't wish the happy couple well? And perhaps more importantly, why?
Bum, bum, bum. So a little recap on who Lucy Foley is. If you've been doing the book club with us, you know that we also did her kind of murder mystery called The Hunting Party, and we both really enjoyed that book. So here's just like a little touchback on who she is as a person. She studied literature in college, and she's worked as a fiction editor in publishing. The Hunting Party was her first crime novel, and this is just kind of like a follow-up to that, where she decided to broaden her horizons. I was like combining a bunch of different things, but she wanted to broaden her horizons and try to do another book. She also writes historical novels and is a published journalist, but she is currently living in London. So that's why if you read the book, you probably noticed that if you're in America like we are, that some of the language was a little bit different, is because she is British, or English, however you want to say it. The Guest List won Best Mystery / Thriller of the Year for the Goodreads Choice Awards. So a lot of people really like vibed with this book, thought it was awesome. So we're excited to kind of talk about it.
So kicking off our thoughts on the book, I thought this book was pretty similar to The Hunting Party. It was like the remote setting, the old friends all coming together, the, storms that rage on and prevent like police from getting there, at that kind of thing. And even the perspectives of like the people that own the venue and then the guests, like kind of thing. It was pretty similar to that, which I mean, reading the books so close together, it was a little bit disappointing just because it felt like I was reading the same book, just slightly different.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Also, having read Ruth Ware's One by One, which is kind of the same book again, like all pretty close together, I was just like, great, can we like have a new concept? But I still enjoyed the book. I didn't think it like ruined it for me, but it was just kind of like, okay.
I ranted to Brittany a bit about my feelings. I feel like it was a little too similar to me. I love her writing. I think she has so much talent, but these were just like insanely similar and a little too cliche, I feel.
Yeah, there were definitely parts I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's hard because some writers, like I've read a lot of like Mary Higgins Clark and think people like that, and they have kind of a formula to it, but I feel like the formula is a little bit more broad, so they can really, it can be set anywhere, the characters can be anything, but it's like,
and there's always a good twist at the end.
Yeah, so basically like she has however many possible suspects or whatever, and their backstories, and then there's like a twist, and so it feels like the formula here was like a little too specific.
Yeah, and I think you might have mentioned this to me before, but it's like it was the same format as well as The Hunting Party, where it was like we have the days prior, and then we jump to now in the present when the crime happened, then we go to days prior, and it's kind of like you're figuring it out. And I felt like she did the same thing. And I think you might have mentioned it to me, where it's like in this type of setting, it might even be better to start off with them finding the body. And then as they're uncovering the truth, you learn about the characters, you learn about why they're there, you learn about what they had against the person. And, you know, and I think that might have been a cool way for her to do a different format, but with the same information that she provided, you know? Because like Jono talking to Will about their stuff back in school, it was like a flashback for Jono when really it could have been just the conversation between him and Will. So I think there were different ways that she could have gone about it, but I still really like her as an author. I just wasn't a fan of this book per se because of its similarity to The Hunting Party, which I loved The Hunting Party. It's just too similar.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she was kind of going for like the vibes of like Murder on the Orient Express, where somebody dies and then everyone on the train has a problem with that person. So
but
it's
you
like,
didn't know.
But you didn't know. But yeah, I agree. I think even saying Will is the one that died, like, okay, we found Will's body, and then unfolding the stories instead of like kind of building it up slowly for like the 2/3 of the book, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, all these people have a problem with him, so like could be anybody. But it's like, okay, then the first 2/3 of the book didn't really matter.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Agatha Christie kind of thing is like, it's a slow burn kind of, but it's the foundation is we found a body and it's this guy, and like we don't know who he is yet, so it's like, what happened? But then you figure out, you know, oh, he did wrong to this person, he did wrong to that person, he did wrong to this person. And that was exactly the, you know, ending of this book, where it was like everyone had a reason to kill him, like everyone hated him basically.
Yeah.
But in the end, you really only have that to hold on to for a very short time during the book.
Mm-hmm. And I like to have it switched up a little bit, I guess. So like the way she writes is very much How to Get Away with Murder, if you've seen that show, where it's like, you know, someone died, you don't know who died, and you keep going back to the present day and then back in time, and you slowly throughout the show figure out who died. And then by the end of the season, you figured out who died, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like what she does, rather than doing like a Clue situation where it's like, this person's dead, we don't know why they're dead, and now it's like, oh, but we all love each other, but secretly this person doesn't, and secretly this person doesn't, and this person knew this person from here, and this person knew this person from here. And then I think it's cool when you have this shocking situation happen where all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this man hated this man and he killed him. Like that, I would have never guessed that, rather than being like, oh, well, I'm kind of canceling out these people and there's only so many people, when the possibilities are endless on how someone could connect to one another. So
Right.
it kind of makes it a better twist with more open options.
Mm-hmm. I think kind of going off of that, the remote countryside where you have a finite group of friends that are stuck together in a storm or whatever only leaves so many directions that things can go. And I think that's kind of like, I don't want to say it's lazy writing, but it's just like an enclosed space. You don't have to think about building a world. You just have to think about, okay, they're in this tiny space with this tiny set of characters, and that's all you have to worry about, instead of like they're in a city going wherever and there's different people they're interacting with. Like, so I think she could definitely, I think she's talented enough that she could take an actual like real setting, like a expanded setting, and do it justice.
Yeah, my mind automatically thought of how like you have a box, like the world wants you to think outside of the box, which is when great things happen, right? But like you think of SpongeBob and it's like imagination inside of a box, and they come up with all this cool stuff. It's awesome. You can do so much like inside of the box, which is this trapped setting inside of a box. Like you can only have so many ways to take care of it, right? To figure out your plot line. But if you go outside of that box, then you can have like endless opportunities to make something crazy happen to intrigue your readers, you know?
Mm-hmm. Not to harp on about how much I love Ruth Ware, but I think her book...
But I love Ruth Ware.
But her book, One by One, is this same, you know, they're on this like ski trip thing and there's a storm and then somebody dies. Like same, pretty much same plot. But I think she is such a creative writer. Like I've read every single one of her books and they are all so different, such different settings, different crimes, different twists, different stuff like that. And so I think One by One does this plot in a way that is entertaining, captures you more.
I also thought that it was going on about like how it was kind of cliche in some ways. It was like there's always infidelity, you know, and there's so much infidelity, and there's so much about people being dumb in their youth or things they did prior, or, you know, stuff like that, rather than like what's going on right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I hate that infidelity is such an easy outlet for almost all writers, not just Lucy Foley. Like, you go into any like crime novel and someone's having sex with someone else, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like forbidden love or, you know, whatever. And, or it's lust or you name it, whatever the reason. And I hate that that's such an outlet. Like, I get tired of it.
Yeah,
it's predictable.
And I think in this case, especially where it was like Charlie and
yeah, it was like Charlie and Julia, and then Hannah had a thing for Will, I think, and then
she, like, but just and
Olivia had a thing for Will. It was like everyone was having sex with everybody, and it was just insane.
But it's just like for the like, oh, they're best friends, but you know, nothing ever happened, but then like, oh yeah, it really did. It's like there's no twist there. There's no, like, everyone expected them to have been together. Like, you know, everyone knew that he cheated on his wife. Like, I don't think that was a surprise to anybody, really. No. So,
but like, come at me and say like he murdered my dog 2 years ago, and I would have been like, oh shoot, you know.
Those are just such easy like paths to take. I really would like to see, especially someone of her like talent for writing, not take the easy route with stuff like that, and like try it without the obvious.
Yeah, it's like, Foley, if you're listening to this, we believe in you. Yes. You got this.
And like the, you know, rich girl that's looking down on all the little peasants and the like.
And I thought it was cheesy with like the celebrity groom who was a movie star, you know, and it's
and
like
her being like a socialite web magazine publisher, whatever, and then Hannah being the like downtrodden, you know, like the way she like portrayed her, I don't know, kind of another cliche where it's like, oh, the mom of two is just kind of a loser, and like her crazy days are in the past and she can't do anything now, and it's okay, like they're just kind of cliche characters.
Yeah, and same thing with like even from her first book to now, it was like Megan or whatever the girl's name was in The Hunting Party. She was like loved to be the limelight and was like the star and thought she was so fabulous, and then you had her friend who was actually sleeping with her husband, and her friend wasn't as like important and felt lesser and like all this stuff. And so it's like kind of the same dynamic as, you know, you had Will and you have like Hannah and Olivia and Julia and Charlie, and it's just like so much going on, like so much infidelity, and it's such a cop out, I feel.
But it really does feel like she took pretty much every aspect of the first book and just like tweaked it just like a tiny bit, and which is interesting because I read a lot of reviews. Like, whenever we do these, I try to read reviews just to see different perspectives on things and like how other people saw it. And one of the two main comments I saw of people that were talking about it were, a lot of people said they did not like The Hunting Party, but they loved this book. And I'm like, what was better about this book than The Hunting Party? You know, because like I think we've said this before to each other. I don't know that we've said it yet, but if we had read this book and not The Hunting Party, we may have enjoyed it more, like the concept more.
I agree.
So I would be so interested to know, like, if any of you listening have read both books and you like this one better. Like, I just want to know what about it like appealed to you more. But, and then the other comment I saw a lot was that the first 200 pages were just like kind of pointless and slow, and that it really only picked up in like the last third of the book. So there's like slow burns, and then there's just like superfluous information.
Yeah,
for
like get
200
on with
pages.
it. Yeah, I feel like Stephen King does that. It's just like pointless background information and pages of someone's like hair color. You know, it's just like, I don't need to know this.
Yeah. So I don't think there was a point in the book where I was just like super bored, but I do think that the first 2/3 of the book, it was kind of like you were waiting for the other shoe to drop, and then you're waiting, and then you're waiting, and then you're waiting, and then all of a sudden it happens like towards the end, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh, okay, cool. Rather than be like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. This author just took me for a roller coaster, you know?
Like, there were no like jaw-dropping moments really in the book. So overall, I did enjoy the book. I think I have some gripes with it, obviously, and I think like I said, I would have enjoyed it more if I hadn't just read 1 to 2 very similar books. I really like the audiobook where there's different narrators for each character because that really helps me track things a lot better. But it was an enjoyable read. I think she can do better, and I'm excited to see her next books. But solid 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I would agree with that rating. I'd probably say like a 3.5. I really liked it. I did the audiobook this time too, and something about like audiobooks, I think that's why I do nonfiction audiobooks better, is because I can get the information, but I'm also not like missing anything important. Like I know names and I can pick back up into it, but you miss certain little things in a story like this, and it's kind of like you missed a big part of the information. So like, oh, she noticed there was blood on her napkin or whatever. Like that comes into play in another chapter or whatever. So I definitely didn't like doing the audiobook for this, but I thought the audiobook's narration was good. And I think, like I said, Lucy Foley's an awesome author. Just the book was too similar is pretty much where it kind of lands for me.
So with that, we're going to jump on to our true crime connections with this. The first one we're going to cover is murder at a wedding. One example of this was the wedding of a man named Joe Melgoza. He was 30 years old, and he had an 11-year-old daughter from a previous relationship that he was raising. He was also a really big part of his siblings' lives and helped raise them. He was marrying his partner, Esther, in Chino, California at her home. The wedding was beautiful. They had a great time. And then it was time for the reception. And at the reception, 2 men showed up, 28-year-old Roni Castaneda Ramirez and 19-year-old Josue Castaneda Ramirez. They were just kind of being rowdy, causing trouble, trying to get alcohol. And as soon as the guests realized that neither man knew anybody at the reception, they were asked to leave, and they did. But as the party was winding down around 2 a.m., they came back, and this time they were carrying bats. They were again asked to leave, but this time they were pretty much looking for a fight, and they started fighting with the guests. Joe stepped up immediately to protect his family, and he was beaten pretty severely with these bats. The police were called. They arrived to the scene and found several injured members of this party, and then they realized that Joe was missing. They couldn't find him. So they started looking around the neighborhood, and they found him sort of off to the side with a really bad head injury after this brutal beating. He was rushed to the hospital, but he died pretty quickly of his injuries. Joe was remembered as an extremely kind and happy man. He was a good father, and there's a GoFundMe that was set up for the family that's raised over $40,000. I believe they're still taking donations, so we'll put that on the website if you want to contribute to that. The brothers were arrested and held on a $1 million bond. They pleaded not guilty. I tried to find an update beyond January 2020 when they had a hearing, but I couldn't find anything. So if we end up seeing anything about this case, we will update you on Facebook or Instagram. But that's pretty much where that one leaves off.
Going into the next case that we're going to talk about was still one of the cases where there was a murder at a wedding. The case we're going to talk about involves a woman named Estrella Carrera. She was married to Arnaldo Jimenez in 2012. They had dated for a really long time, and he was the father of Estrella's youngest son. Estrella, the day after their wedding, Estrella never picked up her children from her family like she was supposed to, so they decided that they should call a wellness check and just make sure that she was okay because, you know, clearly the night before was a lot and crazy, so they were like, where are you? Why haven't you picked up your kids? Estrella was then found in the bathtub of her condo and had been stabbed over 18 times, and this was on May 13th. She was still in her wedding reception dress, and supposedly Arnaldo had called his ex-girlfriend and said he was fleeing because he had killed Estrella and he was just going to leave the country. The FBI think Arnaldo stabbed Estrella in the early morning hours on their way home from the wedding reception on May 12th, 2012, and the FBI put out a warrant for his arrest and a reward for $100,000 in hopes that someone would turn him in. Arnaldo was placed on the most wanted list in the top 10 for unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, first-degree murder. The FBI agent in charge, Jeff Sallet, said, quote, "I'm looking at you now, Arnaldo Jimenez, with a $100,000 reward on your head and on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. You will have very few friends. Do the right thing. Turn yourself in so that you can give Estrella, her children, and the community the closure and justice they deserve." End quote. Arnaldo has yet to be caught to this day. I looked on the FBI site, and he's still listed as one of the top most wanted people.
The next connection we're going to talk about is hazing at boarding schools. There was a lot in the book about the survival game that they, game, quote unquote. It was sort of a hazing ritual for like the new kids at school. And hazing is really common. It's super common in fraternities, sororities at college, and different organizations beyond that even.
Fun fact, just because there's some laws and such that say hazing is not allowed, it still happens.
Absolutely.
Now they just say, if you tell on them, you'll be penalized.
Yes. And this happens quite a bit. I think the stereotypical one is fraternities in college. There's a lot of times that these organizations take it way too far and people die. I think since the mid-1960s, at least one person has died from hazing every single year. In the modern age, the majority of the deaths are alcohol related, but there's lots of other causes of death. There's vehicle accidents, exhaustion, drug overdose, assault, all kinds of stuff. The earliest record I could find of hazing in the U.S. came from the 1830s, but I'm sure there's lots more that just haven't been recorded or haven't been attributed to hazing, but are connected. So just a couple examples. In 1972, a man named Fred Bronner, he was part of the Tri Chi fraternity at Pierce College. He was frequently ridiculed for his weight, among other things. They had a lot of really mean names for him that I won't repeat. On the night of December 22nd, 1972, he was taken 10 miles into the forest and left there. He was at about 3,000 feet of elevation and left to find his way back home. So that's pretty similar to the survival game that they played in the book. Fred had notoriously bad eyesight and he was not in super great shape. So he was pretty disoriented by, being thrown out in the woods. He ended up slipping and falling off a cliffside into a ravine. The fall didn't kill him immediately, but his injuries were so bad he couldn't pull himself out, and he actually died from hypothermia. Another example is 2005. A man named Matthew Carrington, who grew up near San Francisco, ended up attending Chico State University in California. He decided to join the Chi Tau fraternity with his friend Mike Quintana. As part of hazing the new recruits, they went through what's known as Hell Week, and the junior recruits were ordered to be as tough as possible on the new pledges. Matthew and Mike were ordered into the basement where there had been a sewage leak that was flooded in this basement, and they were made to do calisthenics for hours while being yelled at and trivia question stuff. They were forced to do push-ups in the sewage, and they were also forced to drink gallon jugs of water just over and over and over again. And there was water poured on them. There were fans blowing cold air onto them. So that's just miserable all around. After several hours of this treatment, Matthew collapsed, having a seizure, and the other fraternity brothers, probably scared they were going to get in trouble or whatever, didn't call for medical assistance right away. They just kind of were like, oh, he'll be fine.
Which, by the way, this happens a lot. And for their situation, definitely should be charged with murder, But if, just in case anyone out there is young, doesn't know, if you're ever drinking with a bunch of people and someone has alcohol poisoning and you call the police, you're automatically not going to be held responsible for if you were intoxicated as well, as long as you called for the safety of another person.
Yeah, and it's important to be proactive with that because you can literally save someone's life.
Yeah.
So...
And you will not be penalized even if you were drinking as well, as long as you saved a person who was suffering from alcohol poisoning. You will not be penalized.
And also slightly unrelated, but similar if you're in that situation. Just be honest with paramedics about what you've ingested, because they don't care. They're not trying to get you in trouble. They're just trying to save your life.
Yeah, honestly. Like, if you've done opioids, like, it doesn't matter. Like, tell them.
Because that influences what treatment they can give you. And
exactly.
It's important, and you're not going to get in trouble. But Matthew's friends were not good people, and they just left him to suffer until whatever period of time passed that they realized that he was not going to get better. So they finally called 911, and an ambulance came to take Matthew. He was near death at this point and rushed to the hospital. Not a single one of the fraternity brothers came to see if he was okay. No one went with him to the hospital. Nothing. They were just like, sent him off, and that was it. At about 5 a.m. that morning, on February 2nd, Matthew was pronounced dead, and the cause of death was stated to be water intoxication that caused swelling in his heart and brain from the gallons that he was forced to drink. The fraternity was shut down at the school. Some articles about this say that the fraternity had not been like officially recognized by the school that year, but other ones said that it had been recognized and it was just shut down, so I'm not sure. But it definitely was shut down after that, as were pretty much all of the other fraternities. None of them were allowed to recruit new people that year while they were kind of reviewing the rules and how to prevent this from happening again, which, like Hallie said, even the rules and like laws and stuff don't really change it that much. It just makes them go underground a little bit more. But in this case, charges were brought against the 4 boys. One was a misdemeanor. Charges were brought against the 4 boys that were like most involved. One was charged with misdemeanor hazing. 2 were charged with accessory to involuntary manslaughter, and 1 was charged for involuntary manslaughter. And that final one, he served a year in jail, and he has a felony on his record now forever.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the fraternity itself got penalized, at least on that campus's organization.
They lost their like official recognition.
Yeah, because I know when I was in college, there was a fraternity who also had a very bad hazing incident, and they were removed from the campus and were not considered an organization that was there anymore. So also something that they have now is if you are in a fraternity and the fraternity is partaking in hazing, or sorority, it doesn't matter. If you're in a fraternity or sorority and they are partaking in hazing, even if you are not one of the people hazing, but your organization gets accused or blamed of it, it will go on your graduation certificate that you were involved in a hazing thing. Kind of like a record, but it's not on your like legal record, it's on your graduate record.
Yeah, which you have to show to a lot of people, speaking from experience.
Yeah.
So just probably better to not be involved in hurting people.
Yeah.
This case led to Matt's Law, which allowed for felony charges for any like serious injuries or deaths resulting from hazing rituals in California. And I think since then that law has spread to a lot of other states. So just moral of the story, don't be an asshole. And if you join an organization, make sure it's a good one that's not hurting people, because I wouldn't want to be a part of an organization that makes you stand in sewage anyway. So
Exactly.
be safe out there.
So going on to our last little section about things that relate to real life true crime from the books, crime situations, is suicide after leaked explicit photos. Obviously, we know with like today's technology and everything, explicit photos get leaked a lot, and it can really like destroy people's life, you know, really gets to them. People, especially in schools and stuff, get bullied. There were so many that popped up when we searched this. We just kind of picked one that was short and simple because a lot of them are the same thing, where someone took a picture or a video, spread it around, and someone was getting bullied, you know. But the one we're going to talk about today was Tavana Holton, and she was 15 years old living in Florida, and her ex-boyfriend took a video while she was bathing, and he put it all over Snapchat and Twitter, and it had her nudity in it, like fully out there. She was found dead by her mother in June 2016 of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in her bathroom. there had been a lot of previous incidences with bullying as well. So I think when this happened, it was kind of like a final straw for her. And they were even planning on moving schools to give Tavana a fresh start. So clearly she had been going through a lot. If you see bullying, or if, you know, you have a nude picture of someone, just don't be a dick. Plain and simple. Like, keep it to yourself or delete it. Like, it's not for the world to see. And you have to be respectful of other people, because even if you might be like, well, I don't care if anybody sees me naked, not everyone feels that way.
Yeah, and you have to consider, well, another little PSA, anyone under 18, if you have a nude photo of them, even if you're in high school or anything, if you're under 18,
child pornography.
That is child pornography.
And you will go to prison.
And yeah, you can have felony charges on that. That will follow you. You would have to be a sex offender registered for the rest of your life. So even if you're 15, you have a 15-year-old girlfriend and you have nude pictures, that's child pornography. Sending it is disseminating child pornography, which is an even
worse crime,
worse charge. So, you know, even if you're in high school, you think you're all grown up and doing all this stuff,
or because they're the same age as you, and so you're like, oh well, it's fine since my peer. It's not. You could get a felony charge.
So for one, you're committing a crime just by having that, by spreading it, by doing any of that. And for two, if someone sends you that, it's because they trust you in that stuff. Can follow you around forever. And I know, especially these days with like revenge porn being up online everywhere and it just being such a common thing, like that can ruin people's lives.
And teens are brutal. Like, you know, if you're 15 and you're putting out another friend your age's nude photo, you know the backlash they're going to get, and you know what you're doing. And you're doing it anyway.
So malicious, like such an awful thing to do to somebody. So just be careful.
Smart.
Yeah, be careful with who you share that much of yourself with, and don't
do it in the first place. Maybe,
yeah,
you know?
maybe second.
Like, I know we're in
that decision.
Yeah, I know we're in a society now where technology takes over and everything, but you know, just be wise. Just be wise.
Yeah, it's so hard for kids these days, but like honestly, kids that have grown up with technology, just like they've never known a world without it. They've never known, you know, not having YouTube and Snapchat and Twitter.
Yeah.
Like that stuff didn't even come about until I was like mostly through high school, you know.
Exactly. And like people may think with Snapchat, like, oh, well, it disappears. They can screenshot and you have no promise they won't, you know.
Yeah.
Like, be smart, be wise. Don't put yourself in a position for that to happen to you, you know. And obviously Tavana didn't. She was just bathing.
Yeah.
So she wasn't in a position like that. And some people aren't. And, you know, some people, we've obviously heard where, you know, rape happens and people video, and especially at parties and stuff, and someone's taken advantage of and it's caught on film, and that's not the person's fault. They didn't take a nude picture and send it to somebody. So it's like, on that side, just like, don't be a dick. Like, don't do that. Don't do that to somebody else, you know?
Yeah.
Be responsible.
Absolutely.
So, closing on a very serious note there, we're going to jump into what our next book club episode is. So, coming on July 2nd, we will be talking about Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. This is going to be a cool book. We're very excited. I've never read a book by B.A. Paris. I don't really know if there are like any other big ones.
There were some when I was looking it up, but none that I have like heard of
before or anything. So we're kind of excited about this one. I think it'll be a good change of scene. Just to give you a little taste of what the book is like, in case you want to go ahead and buy it and join us, start reading it this month. It says, quote, "Everyone knows a couple like Jack and Grace. He has looks and wealth. She has charm and elegance. He's a dedicated attorney who has never lost a case. She is a flawless homemaker, a masterful gardener and cook, and dotes on her disabled younger sister. Though they are still newlyweds, they seem to have it all. You might not want to like them, but you do. You're hopelessly charmed by the ease and comfort of their home, by the graciousness of the dinner parties they throw. You'd like to get to know Grace better. But it's difficult, because you realize Jack and Grace are inseparable. Some might call this true love. Others might wonder why Grace never answers the phone. or why she can never meet for coffee even though she doesn't work. How can she cook such elaborate meals but remain so slim? Or why she never seems to take anything with her when she leaves the house, not even a pen. Or why there's such a high security metal shutters on the downstairs windows. Some might wonder what's really going on once the dinner party is over and the front door has closed. End quote.
So be sure to pick that up and start reading it, and we will talk about that next month. Thank you so much for joining us once again for the book club. We really love doing these, and we hope that you enjoy it too. If you have any thoughts on the book, you can send us a DM on Instagram or Twitter. You can message us on the contact form on our website. That should shoot us an email. You can share your thoughts on Facebook, and also if you're listening on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment with what you thought about this book, or if you haven't read the book and you listened, does this make you want to read it, or what your thoughts on Lucy Foley are in the first place. And also if you're on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Also, that notification bell is pretty cool. So
just saying. So we will talk to you soon. Thanks for diving into the abyss with us.